What's going on YouTube? It's Teej, back again with another video. And today, as we are on the precipice of the 2024 NFL season, I'm going to be giving you my full season predictions when it comes to records, division winners, as well as, of course, my playoff picks and Super Bowl champ. Really excited to bring this video your way. Would love to hear your thoughts down below in the comment section. Who's your pick to win the Super Bowl this year? And also tell me, who is this year's surprise playoff team? Love to know your idea on who that might be. Not a whole lot of people penning in the Texans in the playoff picture last year at this time, so I'd love to know, who do you think the surprise team is this year? We're going to start on the AFC side, and I've left the AFC West in with no suspense, so sorry about that. Also, if you have any questions about MVP, Rookie of the Year, all that sort of stuff, just drop it down below in the comment section. I'll do my best to get back to you. I normally do a video on that stuff, but they don't always perform well, so let me know if you want to know down below in the comment section. We start with AFC West, and as you see, I think the Chiefs are going to handle it pretty clearly. I think the Chargers could be a sneaky like 9-8 team, maybe upwards to 10-7. I think they're just going to be a lot more fundamental, and that's kind of been the little things that have killed them in the past. They're going to run the ball better. I think the defense under Jesse Minter is going to play well. We'll see how much those receivers can elevate the level of play and maybe the high-end potential of that offense. But of course, it all starts with the Kansas City Chiefs, and Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback, in my opinion, most talented quarterback of all time, certainly the best doing it right now. I think with two speed threats, once they get Hollywood Brown back, him, Xavier Worthy, they're going to force teams into two high shells, and they're going to hand the ball off to Isaiah Pacheco with great success, dump it down to Samaje Perine, Rashee Rice, Travis Kelce doing more of what they did last year, Juju Smith-Schuster as well back, all those yak space eaters over the middle of the field. They're just going to thrive when Kansas City's going to be, forcing teams to play that too high look. Plus, just the mention of having that speed back on the field is a nice welcome addition back into that offense. Something they've had, so to speak, but I think it's going to be a lot more potent this year. I can see a world where the offensive line's a net positive, right? If Jawan Taylor plays better and then Kingsley Suamataia plays at the same level of Donovan Smith, Wanye Morris last year, I think that's a win this year for that offensive line in Kansas City. And it's going to be tough to replace L'Jarius Sneed, but Steve Spagnuolo is, one of the best in the biz. He thrives with these big, physical corners. I think he's going to, if there's anybody to try to find a replacement for L'Jarius Sneed, Spagnuolo's that guy. Not to mention, you have one of the best, football players in the world right now in Chris Jones, leading the way in pass rush. Year 3 for George Karlaftis. Year 2 for Felix Anudike-Uzomah. Yeah, I'm all in on the Chiefs, as most people are. One of the best teams in football for sure. Already did on the Chargers, so the team I have them tied with in second place, and actually because of the tiebreaker, I have the Raiders coming in second place. Another team that could definitely be better than 7-10. That had a nice little coach bump last year, but typically when you see that carry into the next season, there's not that coach bump, right? Because you went from chaos under McDaniels to now Antonio Pierce, but now Antonio Pierce is the status quo. That's what we're used to. Quarterback plays also iffy, and that's kind of where it's I have Gardner Minshew essentially winning the same amount of games as Justin Herbert. Doesn't really sit well with me. The Chargers and then one other team are the two teams that I was I should probably find more wins for them. But nevertheless, there's still flaws in that roster, and I can't make them undefeated just because I like Harbaugh and I like Herbert and I like Antonio Pierce. I can't make the Raiders dogs just because I like Crosby and Pierce and stuff. But I do think that's gonna be a tenacious defense. We'll see what we get out of Tyree Wilson in year 2. Jack Jones, can he stay on the field for the full season? Goes him. Year 2, Jacorian Bennett, Nate Hobbs, Patrick Graham doing his thing at the DC spot. Maybe I'm underestimating, specifically the secondary and the pass defense side. Maybe I'm underestimating what this defense can accomplish in Vegas. But ultimately, it comes down to Gardner Minshew and what this offense looks like. And I do wonder what this ultimately, what's the status of the Raiders once we get to the trade deadline? Because if this team's in sell-now mode, obviously the record down the stretch is not going to be very good. So it's going to be a pivotal point in the season, obviously. And the Broncos at 6-11, and this is not me trying to slander Bo Nix, Sean Payton, or anything like that. I just have question marks at the receiver spot. I think Sutton's a good player. I think Reynolds is solid. I think Marvin Mims can be very good. But we live in a day and an age where the bar for high-end receiver play is just a little bit higher than that trio put together. So I feel like that could be a group that leaves some, to be desired. I like the running backs, offensive line. Wait and see. It's going to be tough to replace Lloyd Cushenberry. And I think Vance Joseph's a good defensive coordinator, but corner 2, edge, still some spots where I'm a little iffy on this team. And ultimately, I think it might take one more year of Sean Payton turning that roster around and, one more year away from the, obviously dead cap hit that Russell Wilson, put on this team. to the AFC East, and you can already see the playoff picture, so I am spoiling myself just a little bit. But I got the Jets as a 2 seed, man. I think with Rodgers, there's really no excuses. And I mean, I know Nathaniel Hackett's not like an OC that you're like, oh man, like that guy's going to be leading a playoff team one day. Like I totally get that. However, I think it's ultimately Rodgers' offense, and I think he's a good enough player to have this team reach its heights. And I know he's coming off a big injury, but nevertheless, I still have faith in him. I don't think that's going to deter his ability to throw it. Maybe he's a little less mobile, but they've made some investments in offensive line. I'm in on Garrett Wilson. Plus, you get some help with Malachi Corley. Mike Williams, if he can stay healthy too, is a really nice back shoulder threat for Rodgers. On the defensive side, if this team's healthy defensively, like Sauce Gardner's corner one in the league. Yeah, you're moving on from Bryce Huff. The Carl Lawson thing isn't looking. I'm not sorry. Carl Lawson's not there anymore, but the Hassan Reddick thing's not looking great right now. Nevertheless, I still think there's enough there between the guys they already have in the room, and hopefully a step forward this year from Will McDonald. So I like the Jets. Also, the Bills sneaking into the playoffs here from the AFC East. Josh Allen's my favorite player in the league, so just to note that bias. But I do think he's an elite quarterback. I think he'll elevate the play of those receivers. I also think they're kind of going receiver zero strategy, and just in real life. And that's not to totally discredit those guys. They're in the NFL, and I am not. So, but they're kind of letting the quarterback dictate, and elevate the play of those receivers. But also, we saw Kansas City make the same pivot. Teams don't want us to throw down the field. We're going to have to play dink and dunk. And that's kind of what I think the personnel and Joe Brady as the OC is kind of leaning me to think that's where this team's going to go. Also, James Cook and Ray Davis there in the backfield. I'm excited about that. And the defense, man, big question mark with Matt Milano down. And can this, Sean McDermott have that secondary playing at a high level once again? This time with, DeMar Hamlin now starting at safety with Jordan Poyer in Miami. So, like, some turnover there, some key spots for this defense. Then edge, I think Greg Rousseau is a good player. Can you get anything out of Von Miller? Can he be anything closer to where he was 2 years ago compared to last season? If so, 10-7, 11-6 is definitely possible. But albeit, while I have this team in the playoffs, there are some, chinks in the armor that I think could ultimately, hold this team back. And I have the Dolphins with the same record, so it's kind of it's similar to last year where the Dolphins and the Bills have a big game in week 18. I don't think that's how the schedule plays out this year, but these two teams neck and neck. And for Miami, the offense is explosive, and if Jalen Phillips, Bradley Chubb come back healthy, throw in Chop Robinson, sign me up for that. Losing Wilkins is a big deal, but I think they have some okay options to kind of fill that void and mitigate that loss. Corner 2, another spot I'm keeping my eye on. And really, Anthony Weaver is the defensive coordinator. That to me is big, because it seems like it didn't really, jive well with Vic Fangio there, which is interesting, considering how much apparently he's beloved in Philadelphia. But maybe just not a culture fit and a perfect match with the guys in the roster. Hopefully Anthony Weaver is. He's a guy that had coaching interviews with the Commanders this cycle. Big year for him. I'm very interested, and hopefully he can maximize level of play on the Dolphins, and hopefully they're a playoff team, because I would certainly like to see Tua get another crack at it in the postseason. And then I have the Pats at 3-14, and this is another one of those teams where maybe I could have made the record a little better. I don't think they're a total dumpster fire, but it's just tough, because if that offensive line's that bad, there's just so many matchups that as I'm going through the season, I'm like, that's going to be a problem. That's going to be a problem matchup. Oh, that's not good. So it can be a little bit of a slippery slope. Also, rookie quarterback, young at the receiver spot. I do like the defense, though. But ultimately, if New England kind of goes through some growing pains, but as a roster, but feels good about Drake May going into year 2, 3-14, you're picking towards the top of the draft. I mean, there's a lot of defensive talent, but you could also trade down and then kind of really reload this roster with some extra assets there. So, sorry, Pats fans, I'm not trying to totally throw you under the bus here, but yeah, 3-14. Maybe there's another win or two in the mix there, but I do think it's going to be a long year once again in New England. Sorry, I don't know why the screen keeps shifting to the left there, but nevertheless, we have the Cincinnati Bengals taking the AFC North, and I have 3 teams from the North making the postseason, and I have the Pittsburgh Steelers finishing under 500 for the first time in the Mike Tomlin era. So the Bengals, they're my Super Bowl pick. Burrow was my MVP pick last year, so I'm kind of doubling down on that. And I think they're going to pay Jamar Chase. Grant, the day I'm recording this, Wednesday, was supposedly a pretty big day that the deal might get done. So not great at the time of this recording that it isn't done, but time will tell. Hopefully it happens sooner rather than later. Question marks on defense, right? Like edge 2, some new movement in the secondary. But I'm going to say this is going to be a bounce back year for Lou Anarumo. And if they can find that edge 2, maybe they're calling the Jets about Hassan Reddick, or I don't know, something. They got to figure something out there, that second edge spot. But nevertheless, if Lou Anarumo gets that defense bouncing back closer to where they were 2 years ago, still one of the best teams in the AFC. Same is true about the Ravens. Lamar, second MVP, like the pass catchers, especially with Tez Walker there. I think that's a nice designated deep threat there for this offense. I think the offensive line conversation has been overblown. I've talked about that plenty in these videos. I think they're going to be just fine. League average at worst. And then I think the defensive side, no Mike McDonald, but, same tree essentially as the play caller. And you bring back Justin Madubuike, Odafe Owe coming off a really nice breakout season. Add Nate Wiggins, add TJ Tampa. Love that investment in the secondary. I think this is, once again, one of the best teams in the AFC. And I have the Browns at the same record. Now, this one's a little tough because, one, is Deshaun Watson healthy? Two, is Deshaun Watson, what level of play is he, I harken back to when the Jets were, in the market for a quarterback, and ultimately did land Rodgers. But that whole time, I was basically saying Garoppolo can get them to the playoffs. Carr might win them a game. Rodgers makes them contenders. And it kind of feels like I'm in the same spot here, where if, let's say, Watson gets hurt or he plays below average, they'll still be feisty. They'll probably be 500 or better, give or take a game. If he's average, they're probably in the playoffs. If he's above average, this team gets scary. And if he gets anywhere close to 2020, then look out. The Cleveland Browns are going to be a force. So he's obviously a huge, swinging variable here. But I love the defense. Love what Jim Schwartz is doing. The offensive line is going to be a strength. Question marks, I guess, at tackle, but I trust that they're going to figure it out. Plus, no Bill Callahan, so maybe I shouldn't be as confident in it, but it's been a strength for such a long time, see no reason why that's going to change, other than Bill Callahan leaving. And then I think Nick Chubb's going to bounce back and be a rock-solid player, so I'm in on the Browns. And then for my Pittsburgh Steelers, I'll try to keep this pretty short, but look, they went 9-2 in one-score games last year. I have a lot of Steelers fans saying, well, dude, there's no way Arthur Smith can be as bad as Matt Canada. Absolutely. Trust me. No one could agree with that more than me. And Russell Wilson can't play as bad as Kenny Pickett. Well, I think Pickett kind of got a shitty shot. No real opportunity other than, 5 games with an interim OC, I guess, to live beyond the Matt Canada era. Not that he would have been great, or maybe Russell Wilson is better, but we're talking about razor-thin margins here. We're talking about razor-thin margins between how good it's going to be, because neither of these guys are elite, and honestly, I wouldn't say either one of them are very good. I wouldn't say either one of them are good. They're just kind of like guys you have to start. And then Fields, we'll see. I think he's going to see the field at some point this year. But the preseason wasn't enough to win him this job when it was, I think, up for the grabs. It was up for grabs. If he hooped this preseason, if he absolutely balled out, he's a starter. He just didn't. So we're looking to see him have that Jordan Love type of renaissance mid-year. The defense can be good. There's no doubt about that. Secondary gives me some pause for concern, but I think Terrell Austin's done a good job kind of dialing it up, especially from a pressure standpoint. Certainly helps having Watt, Hayward, Benton, Highsmith, all those types of guys. And they're going to keep the back end relatively clean. Specifically, if Minkah Fitzpatrick's healthy too, he does a lot of good stuff too, kind of mitigating circumstances and leaving corners in bad spots. But I do think the Steelers are going to go 6-11. And while things have gotten better, that one-score record and other random variable things, I think are going to take a step back for Pittsburgh, and ultimately it's going to result in a losing season. Then we get to the AFC South. Big on the Texans. I'm actually a little surprised they were the 4 seed when it came to the AFC playoff picture, but like Stroud, I think the offensive line serviceable for a slow scheme. Mixon's an upgraded running back. You add Diggs in that mix. Now you got 3 legit nice receivers that fit that offense really well, plus Dalton Schultz. So all in on the offense. I think the defense only got better with Daniil Hunter coming in. You bring back Derek Barnett, who was a nice little addition at the deadline last year. Derek Stingley Jr. is only getting better. Yeah, I mean, and then plus you bring in a Kamari Lassiter from the draft. Absolutely. Sign me up for what Houston's got working for him right now. Then we get the Jags at 7-10. And I mean, it's nothing too negative. I think Trevor Lawrence is a guy who could definitely have this team playing above that. And I like Ryan Nielsen coming as the DC. So another one of these teams where I wish I could make it better, but I want to see the offensive line a few weeks in. And I want to see how this new look receiving core around Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram kind of plays out. In a lot of ways, I could see it playing out better. Other ways I could see where, Calvin Ridley is a better talent than Gabe Davis. So maybe it's not a step forward, But Brian Thomas Jr. is ultimately kind of going to be the determining factor for that receiving room. And if he looks as good as he did LSU, okay, cool. He's a really nice compliment next to Christian Kirk. And then the defensive side, bringing in Eric Armstead, one of their edge rushes there. Hopefully Armstead plus Hines Allen is enough. And then that second corner spot. But again, I like Ryan Nielsen too. So I'm not trying to be a Jags hater, but again, head to head, it's just, I feel like there's better teams in the NFL. So that's just kind of the way it shook out. The Colts at 5-2. Another one, man, I got Anthony Richardson in a handful of fantasy leagues, got Michael Pittman in a couple. I like Adonai Mitchell, got him in a handful as well. So, like, there's a lot that I like about this team. And there's a lot of guys that I liked coming out of the draft on this team. Just kind of the way the head-to-heads shook out. And this is definitely one that number could be completely flipped, and it wouldn't totally surprise me. It's going to come down to Anthony Richardson, though, and it's just tough banking, going out on a limb and saying the Colts are going to be the team that wins AFC South when I've seen, 4 starts out of Anthony Richardson. I think there's going to be some bumps along the way, but hopefully by the second half of the season, he's got it figured out. And if so, the Colts are scary because I think the rest of that roster is there. And then the Titans at 5-12 on Big Will Levis guy. I like the investment they made around the rest of that offense. I think the defense can be pretty solid. I think they're just one offseason away, right? Like a little bit more work on that offensive line. A little bit more in regards to pass rush next offseason. I think this team can be there. Also a new head coach. So let's let Brian Callahan, get a little bit better, learn on the job. First year as a head coach, that's always going to be a little tough. Does have a great mentor there with his dad, but this is another team that could be certainly better than this, and it wouldn't totally shock me. And actually, I'd be very happy about it considering how much I like Will Levis. So I hate to do that to the AFC South, but and especially when you have 3 teams from the North getting in, sometimes the head-to-heads really start to cannibalize one another that way. Switching over to the NFC now, the San Francisco 49ers, as complete a roster there is in football. I won't drone on about this. They are the 1 seed for me coming out of the NFC. I got the Seahawks making the playoffs, man. I think Geno Smith's still underrated. We'll see. 3rd year as a starter, maybe he gets a little figured out. I also think JSN's ready to emerge as that number 2 target in the offense. I think Ryan Grubb, welcome change. Not that I'm excited about Shane Waldron in Chicago, don't get me wrong, but I think Ryan Grubb's just going to do something new, fresh for that offense, and they kind of needed something new, something fresh to get him over the hump. But I also think Mike McDonald's just going to turn that defense around, wholesale. Because there's always been pieces about it, and there's flashes and there's games where they play well, but as a whole, it feels like a unit that maybe didn't totally live up to expectations. I think Mike McDonald is going to do the complete opposite, if anything. Like he's the type of guy that can get a unit to over exceed expectations but you say all that with the talent this roster has on the defensive side, like this team over exceeds expectations on the defensive side. Oh my God. That would be to say that this is a top 5 defense in the league, which I know Steelers fans, Browns fans, Jets fans. I hear you all. I hear you all ready to type at me saying there's no way in hell Seattle can get there. I'd say don't rule out Mike McDonald and don't rule out Byron Murphy, the junior, the best defensive player in the class, in my opinion. Devin Witherspoon, Tariq Woolen on a new scheme. A lot of things to like there, especially with the scheme. So I think this is a really solid roster. Not a whole lot of glaring weaknesses other than tackle. And I like those 2 young tackles. So if they're healthy on the field, I think the team's going to be pretty solid. We get the Rams just missing the playoffs. They're at 9-8. And I love me some Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford. That duo has been awesome to watch. And it really works with the scheme. Like the offensive line investments. Puka plus Cooper Kupp for a full season. Sign me up for that. Absolutely. Davis Allen, good breakout candidate for fantasy. Defense, I do think it's going to take a step back. As much as I like Verse and I like Fisk, I like the addition of Trey White, bringing back Darius Williams, love the signing of Cam Curl, super underrated. You're replacing Aaron Donald. So there's going to be a step back, at least for the first year. And also a change in DC may take some time to fully adapt there. But 9-8's not terrible. And I'd be really curious to see what Sean McVay wants to do, especially now that he's calling preseason games. Like I'm on like eternal, like when is Sean McVay going to get the Thursday Night Football broadcast job? Like when is he going to take that? So, but I think 9-8 would be enough to keep him around. And I think the NFC West might be back to like being one of the best divisions of football, because you can see even the Cardinals 7-10. I think this team's going to be pretty scrappy. Kyler Murray's a solid player. I think he is a franchise type of quarterback, maybe not elite, but he's a franchise level quarterback, and you look at his contract compared to the rest of the league now, it doesn't feel so bad. Marvin Harrison Jr. is the tie that raises all ships. Trey McBride hoping to double down on his second, after his breakout year in year 2. Trey Benson, James Conner, like that. The offensive line's getting there, still room to improve, but certainly moving in the right direction. Same is true about the defense, and I think especially once Darius Robinson's back, you're going to start to see where this defense is heading, because I think he's going to be a big part of it on the defensive line, and I'm really eager to see the immediate impact, or maybe potentially lack thereof, but hopefully immediate impact of Max Melton and Elijah Jones, 2 guys that I loved in the NFL draft. I hope they can hit the ground running and really give that secondary a boost. So, like I said, the NFC West, I think the AFC North, NFC North are probably the best divisions in football, but the NFC West, working itself back into that conversation. All right, let me get to the NFC North. As noted, I have the Lions as the 2 seed going 12-5. Ben Johnson's back. That's going to be great for Jared Goff. Offensive line's the best in the NFL. It's number 2 right behind Philly, but I'll give it the number 1 spot right now. Amon-Ra St. Brown, one of the best receivers in football. Cleve Raymond, solid. Can Jameson Williams take that step forward? That's the key. That's the key this year for the Lions, because if he does, this team is absolutely elite. But I also want to throw out Sam Laporta, huge year, hoping that he can do it again in year 2. Defense has improved, lots of investment at corner, some investment on the defensive line with DJ Reader, Mark Davenport. So like all this kind of comes together. It looks really nice on paper. So yeah, I'm absolutely buying in. I also think Dan Campbell's a really good coach. I'm a big analytics guy. I like that he's pushing those numbers forward. So yeah, big fan of Dan Campbell's. Also, great Applebee's commercial. I mean, like, the comedic timing there is actually pretty solid. So like Dan Campbell, got to get you into some more commercials then. Packers, I got them make the playoffs too. I'm all in on Jordan Love, big fan of his. I think the second half last year is true. The receivers are only keep getting better. We'll see what happens with Christian Watson. He feels like the X factor. If he can stay on the field, this goes from like a really good young unit to like, okay, one of the best units in football if he's on the field and doing his thing. But maybe it's John Tavian Wicks who takes over that role. That wouldn't shock me either. Luke Musgrave, Tucker Kraft, they're a tight end like that. This team always, figures it out offensive line. I think Jordan Morgan plugging in at right guard. I'm looking at the 5 across the O-line. I don't see a glaring weakness, which is awesome. It's a weak link unit. I see no real weak links. And some turnover in the backfield, but it almost feels like Josh Jacobs is like hitting a reset button. They're not totally stylistically the same, as they're actually really not stylistically the same. But it almost just feels like, oh, you remember that contract you gave Aaron Jones a couple years ago? What if we got running back a little bit younger and just give him the same thing? Let's just like hit reset on that real quick. And that's kind of what they did. And I also like Marshawn Lloyd as a fit. And I think this is the year the defense finally lives up to the name on paper, right? And I think Jeff Hafley's going to be the guy that gets him there. I like the pass rush. Love what the secondary is looking like right now for that scheme. Absolutely in on the Packers. Bears, not too far away from making the playoffs. I'm a little hesitant to buy into the offensive line as like a playoff team, but I think they're going to be knocking on the door, and I think Caleb Williams can be legit. I think the receivers going to play at a high level. Is this the year where we say, hey, Braxton Jones may be good for a 5th rounder, but is he good if you take that caveat away? Like, can we make this better? That's going to be an interesting one, something I got my eyes on. Nate Davis, obviously a big year for him as well. The defense, especially that second edge spot, I know they did just make a trade to bring in some reinforcements, but Montez Sweat brought a huge boost. Is that going to be the true again this year? And you also get the change from Alan Williams to Matt Eberflus calling plays, and just like the Antonio Pierce. You get the new coach bump, but like next year, the status quo is the status quo, so you don't get that bump. So, I think it's going to be a good team. I think it's a really good division, too. So sometimes you just cannibalize one another. The Vikings are 4-13. This is definitely the one. Like, if I could pick one team I needed to add more wins to, I think it's the Vikings, because that 4-13 is rough, man. And but some of it's, too, you just look at head-to-head matchups, and it's like, oh, well, it's Sam Darnold versus... And Sam Darnold comes out as the loser there. So I'm not trying to totally, hold the Vikings back because they don't have their first-round quarterback, but also concerns at corner and the interior offensive line still. There's some spots there where I'm like, not my favorite, as you get to see some blank power rankings there. But nevertheless, I do think this is a team that's better than 4-13, but just the head-to-head, that's just ultimately the way it shook out. I'm sorry, Vikings fans. I wish I could turn that around. Then we get to the NFC South. I have the Falcons as the 3 seed. The Bucs as the 7 seed. The Bucs kind of running it back, and I think, Liam Cohen's not a terrible step down from Dave Canales, so I think, they're still a good football team. Don't overlook the Bucs. The Falcons, Kirk in the Dome, those weapons in that scheme, a Sean McVay disciple scheme with Zach Robinson as the OC. I think it all fits into place. Matt Judon, he may not be like an elite top tier edge rusher, but he's certainly better than the guys they had. And also stop the run at a high level. Him, plus you partner up Justin Simmons, Jesse Bates. Love the idea of that tandem, especially in like a defense can run a lot of cover 3 and quarters. Like I think those two guys, that's going to be awesome to watch over the middle of the field. Then we get to the Panthers, and I think they're going to take steps in the right direction, but this is still a team that probably is one more offseason away. Yes, they are improved, but they were coming from a very bad state. They were ultimately the number 32 team in my power rankings. I did have the same record as the Saints, but again, you got to think about like Panthers finished last in the division last year, so their schedule is slightly easier than the New Orleans Saints. In the Saints right now, it's just I'm so iffy about those tackles right now. Where like I look at Seattle, I'm like, I like those tackles coming into the draft, so I'm optimistic about it. And I like Talise Fuanga, but I evaluated him as a right tackle, and it honestly makes no sense for them to flip Penning when he's been working on the left side, and Fuaga's been playing on the right side. So I don't know. And now that flip's got me a little sketched, and maybe I'm overthinking this, but that right now is really holding me up. We'll see what Clint Kubiak does as an OC. I think he was a solid play caller, not great, but hopefully he's learned some new things in San Francisco, and he'll be able to prove me wrong with this record. Last division to talk about, the NFC East. I got the Eagles coming out on top, which would continue the trend, right, of no back-to-back division winners since like 2000 or something like that. Crazy. I think the Eagles have the most complete roster of the division. They also have the best quarterback of the division right now. So, yeah, that one's pretty simple to me. And I think Vic Fangio is going to be a really nice boost to that defense, especially if, like James Bradbury misses time. They also invested a corner, which certainly goes a long way. So, yeah, I like the Eagles a good bit. Cowboys below 500. That might be a little harsh. Again, like I definitely could go back and flip, a game in there to make it like 9-8. So, but bold take here, I wouldn't be shocked if Washington finishes second in the division. And I don't even love that roster, to be honest. Like, I really don't. But receiver 2, Gilmore's gone in Dallas. What does that ultimately mean? And what does that mean specifically for the nickel spot? If Bland's going to be playing full-time outside. The interior defensive line, is Mozzie Smith going to take a step forward this year? Also, transition from Quinn to Zimmer, I think that's going to be fine, but just a new look, guys in new places. I'm just curious, and I could totally be wrong. Like, this team could totally go 10-7 and 11-6 again. And then I'm actually not too worried about the O-line. The guys have looked pretty good in this preseason, so I'm not too iffy on that, but once you get to the actual season, maybe that does become a bit of a concern there for Dallas. But 8-9, 9-8, there were a couple of games I flipped back and forth. Tough one there, evaluating Dallas. Washington, I think they did a lot of solid moves in free agency, right? Just like setting a new floor, right? And getting guys that fit this new, system, both from Dan Quinn's defensive side of it, but also Cliff Kingsbury offensively. But I still think they're just a little bit away. Like, there's, especially at like edge and corner, they're missing some top end talent on that defense. Left tackle, concern for me going into the season as well for the Commanders. But I think this team's going to be scrappy, and this is going to be, and especially someone who has like a lot of fans who are, or a lot of friends who are fans of the Commanders. This is going to be as exciting a time there's been for Washington and that football team in quite some time. And the Giants 4-13. They were another one of these teams that kind of turned into a punching bag. Oh, they're playing the Giants, that's a win. Oh, they're playing the Giants, that's a win. Oh, Giants versus this team. Yeah, Giants aren't as good. And part of it's Daniel Jones. Part of it, I still have some concerns about that offensive line. I mean, I think Jermaine Illuminor would have been a solid answer at right tackle, but I don't know. Apparently they're playing him a guard. So, I don't know. I've been hearing so many different things, and a lot of that is certainly because of Daniel Jones. But also it's like your secondary weapons behind Malik Neighbors still aren't fantastic. New pieces on the offensive line. But John Runyon's never really been a great player. And I want to see how that ultimately settles into, like, what's the best five and who's playing where. And defensively, yeah, you bring in a Dory Jackson. That's awesome. I think Shane Bowen will have this team play the run better. But Deonte Banks has to take a step forward in year 2. Otherwise, there's still going to be a little bit of a problematic defense. But this ultimately comes down to like Daniel Jones, and just when I have head-to-head battles, kind of like the Sam Darnold thing, it's like that guy's better than Jones. So like, yeah, I like this team to win. So it is tough. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to like totally ruin the day of all these teams, these fan bases I'm giving negative records to, but we went division by division. Now let's go ahead and run through the playoffs. All right, here is our playoff picture as I have it sorted out, and we're going to go game by game. I'm going to have the Baltimore Ravens knock off the Houston Texans. In Houston, that's tough, but I really like the completeness of that roster. In Baltimore, I also think the secondary can go toe-to-toe, but that's definitely a coin toss game because CJ Stroud is awesome, and I don't want to bet against him. But also, I'm a big Lamar guy, so it's tough for me to not root for someone who's a division rival, albeit, but someone I really, really like. And then I'm going to go with the home teams here, Bengals, Jets. Yeah, I'm just going to buy into Lou Anarumo, getting the defense back on track. And Cincy, the offensive firepower is certainly still there. Jets, love the defense, and I think Rodgers is going to be the real deal and live up to the hype that's been there when he's been healthy. And then we get to the NFC side. This one's tough. Let's start with the Lions. I'll take the Lions over the Bucks. Repeat of the wild card last year, right? Didn't they play in the wild card? I'm pretty sure. And then Falcons, Seahawks. Ooh, that one's tough because Mike McDonald, man, like... I'll go with the Falcons there because at home, Kirk in the Dome, yeah, sign me up for that. But, it's a big game for Kirk, so we'll see. That might be a little tough for me to kind of bank on. And then we get to Packers, Eagles. I'll have the Eagles winning. That's another coin toss one, right? Let me see how these two teams are finishing down the stretch. But I also think two teams that have made some improvements on defense specifically from the play caller standpoint. So that's kind of a tough head-to-head because I'm excited about both sides offensively, but I'm also like really excited to see what the defenses look like. So that's kind of a tough one for me to call out. Anyways, let's get on to the divisional round then. I think the Jets at home, Chiefs at home. Oh wow, what a boring round for your boy here. This one's close. Like that one I could totally flip, but I'm gonna have the Jets making a little run here. And like I'll also be honest, we'll talk about it with the next round because I don't want to be too boring. I don't want to give away yet. But yeah, Jets, I'll say the defense has just enough in them to slow down Jamar and T and co. And the offense is able to get it done against Rumo. Chiefs, they're the best team in the AFC. I'm not going to bet against them. Same thing with the 49ers. Just it's hard on paper to not pick them. Granted, just wait. Both those teams are going to have a little bit of a surprise coming. And I got the Lions over the Falcons. I think the Falcons are trying to get to where the Lions are. Like, there's a lot of similarities between these two teams, but the Falcons are trying to be where the Lions are right now. And I do think the Lions are further on in that process. All right, let's have some fun here, guys. Like, did you click on this video to see, oh, this guy put Chiefs and Niners in another Super Bowl? Wow, what a bold take. No, let's have some freaking fun here. Lions, Jets, because why the hell not? Sounds awesome. Sounds awesome. And most people get their Super Bowl prediction wrong anyway. So let's say the Lions get their vengeance, and Jared Goff this time hits the 4th and 2 hitch, and this team scores a touchdown and holds on to the win. I will not accept Dan Campbell being the one to blame for that 4th down decision. Jets, Chiefs, it's just hard to make it 3 straight Super Bowls and win 3 straight. So some of it's just kind of variance, but also like Rodgers and, the offensive line hopefully stays healthy. The pass rush is legit. The defense is great. And, yeah, this is just fun. And now you get 2 teams that are like, oh my gosh, this Super Bowl and these fan bases would be freaking awesome to watch. Like the hype for the 2 weeks leading up to this would just be spectacular. So, Jets, Lions, I'll say the Lions win it. I'll give Detroit fans the bone. They hate when I talk shit about Jared Goff, and I don't think he'll win a Super Bowl. No disrespect, but I will give you the prediction here just to hedge my bets. And this might be just far enough in the playoffs to keep Aaron Rodgers around in Europe for one more year, and then the Jets run it back. But I think this should just be a really fun Super Bowl and a really exciting one to get to watch and cover and stuff like that. So, it's probably going to be wrong, but let me know your Super Bowl prediction. Who's the matchup? Who you got winning it? I could have gone chalk and gone 49ers Chiefs, but I like to have fun. So let's go Lions over the Jets. I'll go final score 27-23. Lions are your Super Bowl champ. Guys, let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. Let me know if you want to hear my MVP award picks, things like that. Also drop that down below in the comment section. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you want more football content. Lots more draft content on the horizon. I think I'm going to have a mock draft out here pretty soon, the next week or so. And I hope you guys enjoyed. Hit that like button if you did. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Teej, and I'm signing off.